Hello and welcome. I'm really glad you're here. You're listening to another episode of Super English Talks, the channel where we don't just help you learn English, but help you live through it. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you really paused? I mean, stopped for a moment and asked yourself where you're going, not just in terms of your job or where you live, but also in terms of your emotions, your thoughts, and your personal life. Our world is always moving. It always pushes us, demands things from us, and makes us feel busy. But how often do we check in with ourselves? How often do we ask, who am I becoming? That's what we are talking about today. And we're not going to talk in a vague, motivational way. We are going deep. Real growth, growth that lasts and really changes you, isn't just about thinking positively or making random resolutions on New Year's Day. Real growth is a process. It is a step-by-step journey. And like any journey, it needs a map or a guide. Something you can come back to when things feel confusing or difficult. This is where the growth formula comes in. It's a simple way to remember the key ideas that help you grow as a person. Each letter of the word growth stands for an important part of self-improvement. G is for goals, knowing what you want and having a direction. R is for routine, creating habits and daily actions that keep you moving forward. O is for ownership, taking responsibility for your life instead of waiting for things to happen. W is for willpower, having the strength to do what is important, even when it is hard. T is for time management, using your time well so that you can focus on what matters most. H is for habits, building small, consistent actions that create lasting change. Think of these ideas like a garden. You are the gardener. Some days, your garden grows quickly and beautifully. Other days, it feels like a struggle just to water the plants. But no matter what, your garden is growing and so are you. Because this is Super English Talks, we are doing two things at the same time. First, we are learning about personal growth and how to improve ourselves. Second, we are practicing English. Listening to this episode helps you understand natural spoken English, idioms, and expressions you might not find in textbooks. You'll hear English as people actually speak when they talk about real life and thoughtful topics. I will also ask questions along the way. This is not just about listening. Listening here is active. It's about thinking, reflecting, and connecting the ideas to your own life. You may wonder, why these 6 ideas? Why this formula? Let me be honest. It is not magic. It is not from a famous book or a viral video. It is something I have noticed in people I admire, in learners who really make progress, and in my own life. Whenever I felt lost, stuck, or overwhelmed, it was because one or more of these 6 areas were ignored. Think about it. Without goals, we drift. Without routine, we lose momentum. Without ownership, we wait for change instead of creating it. Without willpower, we give in to short-term comfort. Without time management, we feel rushed and overwhelmed. Without good habits, we go back to old behaviors even when we want to improve. Does that sound familiar? Here's the good news. You don't need to fix everything at once. This isn't about quick fixes. It's like planting a seed or starting a long-term project. You build it step by step. You create your own version of the growth formula, one that fits your life, your goals, and your rhythm. In this episode, we will explore each letter of growth one by one. I will share examples, ideas, and questions so you can think about how these concepts apply to your life. By listening, you will improve your English and your understanding of how people really speak. And at the same time, you will learn more about yourself and how you can grow. So, are you ready? Are you ready to look closely at the systems behind your actions, the mindset behind your habits, and the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you can do? Because that is where real growth begins. Not outside, but inside. Not tomorrow, but today. As we go through this episode, remember, this isn't just about listening to me. It's about listening to yourself. paying attention to your thoughts, your desires, and the direction you're heading in life. Let's begin with the first step of the growth formula, G for goals. G is for goals. Vision as the first step. Goals are the foundation of growth. You've probably heard the word goal many times. People say, set your goals, chase your goals, don't give up on your goals. It almost sounds like a cliché, doesn't it? But when we slow down and think carefully, we realize goals are much more than just things to check off a list. Goals are like markers that show the direction of your life. They give structure to the kind of life you want, whether in language learning, career, relationships, or your personal identity. Think of a goal as an internal compass. It points you toward the version of yourself you want to become. But here's something important. Not all goals are equal. There is a big difference between a vague wish and a clear, actionable objective. A vague goal is, I want to get better at English. A clear goal is, I want to hold a 15-minute conversation in English without switching to my native language by the end of the month. One is a wish. The other is a plan. Many of us confuse wanting something with actually working toward it. It's not because we're lazy. It's often because we haven't been clear enough about what we want. Ask yourself, what does better really mean? What would progress look like, feel like, or sound like? How will you know when you're getting closer? These details are essential. Without them, your goal floats around in your mind, untethered and easy to forget. For example, when I started Super English Talks, I didn't just think, I want to help people learn English. That was the seed, but a seed isn't enough to grow a tree. I had to break it into clear, actionable goals. Who exactly do I want to help? What kind of content will I create? How often will I publish? How will I measure success? By followers, feedback, or usefulness to real learners? This process of clarifying and committing is what transforms a dream into a real direction. It's not always easy. Sometimes it means sitting with discomfort or admitting the truth about what we've been avoiding. But without clarity, progress is nearly impossible because you're not aiming at anything specific. Take a moment and ask yourself, what's a goal you've wanted for a long time but haven't taken real steps toward? You know the one. The idea that pops into your mind during a walk or right before you fall asleep. It excites you but never seems to move forward. Why do you think that is? Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's perfectionism. Or maybe you never broke it down into smaller, actionable steps. In English, collocations can help not just your language, but your mindset. We say, set a goal, work toward a goal, achieve a goal, let go of a goal. Notice how active these expressions are. Goals are something you do. You set them, chase them, adjust them, and refocus. They don't achieve themselves. There's another layer here, your long-term vision. Short-term goals help you take steps every day. But your vision is like the horizon. It keeps you grounded when progress feels slow or invisible. For language learners, this could be imagining yourself giving a presentation in English, traveling alone and speaking confidently, teaching others what you've learned. Your vision gives your goals meaning. It connects what you do today to the person you want to become tomorrow. That's why it's not enough to write simple goals like study more or speak better. These are just starting points, not destinations. Instead of letting your goals stay blurry in your mind, try asking yourself some simple, practical questions. What would this goal look like in real life? What is the next visible step I can take right now? What resources, time, or support do I actually need to make this happen? When you ask questions like these, your goals become clearer. They move from being something you just think about to something you can actually act on. Clarity makes action possible. Now, I want to be honest with you. Goal setting can sometimes bring up frustration or self-doubt. Maybe you've set goals before and didn't follow through. That's normal. We all have a list of someday goals that never quite happened. But here's the important part. You're here now. You're listening. You're reflecting. You're engaging with these ideas, even in a second language. That is not nothing. That is a real, powerful step forward. If your inner critic starts speaking up, the voice that says you've failed before or you're not consistent enough, remind yourself, growth is not linear. Just because a goal didn't work the first time doesn't mean it was the wrong goal. Maybe the strategy wasn't right, or maybe it just wasn't the right season of your life. Here's a gentle challenge. Pick one goal that really matters to you right now. Make it specific. Make it visible. Write it down. Say it out loud. Share it with someone you trust, or even send it to yourself in a message. And most importantly, identify the next step, not the final step, just the very next small step. That is how momentum builds, not with giant leaps, but with small, steady actions. Take a deep breath. You've just completed the first part of the growth formula. That goal, the internal compass, is now on your radar. That's something to be proud of. R is for routine, the invisible architecture of success. Up next, we talk about the second letter, R for routine. We've talked about goals and how they give you direction, how they turn vague ideas into clear, actionable steps. But here's the truth. Goals don't work well without structure. That's where routine comes in. Routine might sound boring at first, maybe even rigid, but think about it differently. Your routine is like the invisible architecture of your life. It quietly holds everything together. It shapes who you become, not all at once, but gradually, day by day. When you pay attention, you notice something interesting. It's often not the big, dramatic actions that make the biggest difference. It's the small, repeated behaviors that either build you up or wear you down. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wait for motivation. You don't give yourself a motivational speech every morning. You just do it. It's part of your routine. Now imagine approaching your language learning, or any personal goal, the same way. What if it wasn't about feeling inspired, but simply about showing up? That is the power of routine. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. It's emotional, and emotions naturally change. Discipline built into a routine is what creates results. Especially on days when you feel tired, distracted, or uncertain. That is when your routine becomes your anchor, keeping you steady when everything else feels unstable. In English, we have phrases that describe this well. Stick to your routine. Fall off track. Anchor your day. These phrases show us something important. Routines stabilize us. They make progress possible even when motivation disappears. Routines are important because they give us something steady to return to when life feels chaotic or when we forget the bigger picture. They act like anchors, keeping us on track even when things get busy or confusing. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you are learning English and also working full-time. Your days are already full, and it can feel impossible to fit in extra practice. But you decide you want to improve your listening skills. Instead of telling yourself, I'll practice when I have time, which often doesn't work, you create a simple routine. For example, you listen to a podcast for 10 minutes every morning while making your coffee. That's it. No stress, no pressure, just a small, consistent habit that fits into your day. Over time, these small routines make a big difference. You start to recognize words more easily. Your ear becomes sharper. Your confidence grows. And it didn't take huge amounts of willpower, just consistency. Routines are powerful because they reduce the number of decisions you have to make. Think about it. Every choice you don't have to make saves mental energy. This is something successful people in many fields understand very well. Take athletes, for example, Serena Williams or LeBron James. Their routines are almost sacred. It's not only about physical training. Their routines include mental preparation, sleep, nutrition, and even pregame rituals. All of these habits give them structure and help them perform at their best. Writers, too, rely on routine. Haruki Murakami, for example, wakes up at 4 a.m., writes for 5 to 6 hours, and then goes for a run. He does this every day. Why? Because creativity doesn't come from magic, it comes from rhythm, from showing up consistently. Even with all this evidence, many people resist routines. Why? Maybe routines feel restrictive. Or maybe the idea of doing the same thing every day sounds boring. But here's the truth, routine doesn't take away freedom, it creates it. When you automate the important parts of your day, you save mental energy. You don't waste time deciding what to do. Your system already does the work for you. This gives you more freedom to focus on what matters. That said, routines do require self-awareness. You need to notice when you've fallen off track and give yourself permission to start again without guilt. Falling behind is normal. Being human means you will sometimes miss a habit. But the real strength is in your ability to return, reset, and recommit. Now, ask yourself, what routines are shaping your life right now? Some of them might be unconscious, like checking your phone first thing in the morning. Are your mornings calm or chaotic? Do your evenings help you rest, or are they filled with endless scrolling? What is one small routine you could add starting tomorrow to support the goals you set earlier? It doesn't have to be dramatic. Small changes are more sustainable. For example, 5 minutes of journaling in the morning. Turning off your screens and listening to calming music before bed. Reading one paragraph in English instead of checking the news first thing in the morning. You don't need to redesign your whole life. You just need to create better rhythms, small, personal habits that help you move forward. Routines are powerful because they help you build trust with yourself. When you stick to a routine, even a tiny one, you are telling yourself, I follow through. I do what I say I will. And this trust in yourself, self-trust, is priceless. So, as we finish this section, take a moment to reflect not only on your goals, but also on how you structure your days to reach them. Goals give you vision, but routines give you movement. Without movement, vision stays stuck in your imagination. You're not just learning English. You're learning to create a life that supports the person you are becoming, day by day. Next, we move to one of the most important and transformative ideas in the growth formula, ownership. This is a concept many people avoid, but it is essential for real growth. And yes, it might feel challenging, but in the best way possible. Before we dive in, take a deep breath. Reset. Ask yourself, what will I return to tomorrow without needing motivation to get started? This is the mindset of ownership. O is for ownership, stepping into your power. So far, we've talked about goals as the compass that shows your direction and routine as the daily engine that keeps you moving. Now, we come to ownership, a deeper, sometimes uncomfortable idea. Let me ask you directly, where in your life are you still waiting for permission to act? Where are you hoping someone else will open the door, give the green light, or make the first move so you can become the person you already know you can be? These questions are not easy, but they are essential if you want to grow. Ownership is simple but powerful. It means you stop blaming others and start claiming responsibility for your life. Not just for the good choices you make, but for all of them. It is the moment you stop saying, "This is happening to me," and start saying, "This is happening through me." This shift from passive to active is where personal power begins. In English, we often talk about stepping into your power. It is a metaphor for waking up to your own influence over your life. We use verbs like own, acknowledge, and reclaim. We have phrases like take the reins, which comes from horseback riding, meaning to take control. On the other hand, we also have the expression play the victim, which describes someone who avoids responsibility and focuses on being wronged or stuck. We all do this sometimes. Life can be hard. We get tired, overwhelmed, or compare ourselves to others. We may blame our circumstances for why we can't move forward. And yes, some circumstances are real barriers, financial difficulties, health problems, or systemic inequalities. Ownership is not about ignoring reality. Instead, ownership asks, even within these limits, What can I choose? What can I control? Because there is always something you can do. There is always a next step. There is always a way to show up differently. Let's bring this back to language learning, since that's why many of you are here. You might have said to yourself, I don't have time. I'm not good at speaking. I never had a good English teacher. Maybe all of these things are true. But ownership asks you, now what? What will I do about it? You can't change your past, but you can shape your future. Ownership isn't about shame. It isn't about saying it's all your fault. It's about acknowledging your influence. You may not control everything, but you do control your effort, your mindset, your habits, and your choices. And that is more power than you might realize. The tricky part about ownership is that it is quiet and internal. It doesn't come with applause. No one sees it when you decide not to complain. Show up for something even when it's hard. Let go of a blame story you've been repeating for years. These quiet decisions, made consistently, are the ones that change your life slowly, quietly, and permanently. I remember a time in my own journey, not just as a creator, but as a human, when I noticed something important. I was blaming everything around me, algorithms, schedules, people not responding. It felt safe to blame others because if it wasn't my fault, then I didn't have to change anything about myself. But nothing really changed until I looked in the mirror and asked myself, what is my part in this? What am I avoiding? What am I afraid of? Once I truly owned my part, really accepted it, I started to move again. And that movement created momentum. That momentum led to real growth. This is why ownership is such a vital part of the growth formula. Without it, your goals and routines can feel hollow, like you are doing things for someone else or waiting for imaginary approval. But when you take ownership, every decision becomes yours. Your learning becomes yours. Your life becomes yours. Here's a reflection prompt for you today. Where in your life are you still waiting for permission to act? Where are you blaming others, your past, or your circumstances instead of stepping forward and taking the reins? Start there. Be honest with yourself. Don't judge your answer. Just notice it. Awareness is the first step to real change. Remember, you are not powerless. Even when it feels like you have no options, you still have the power to choose. How you show up, what you focus on, the story you tell yourself, what action you take next. This is a kind of power no one can take away from you. W is for willpower, navigating the inner storm. If ownership is about taking back control of your choices, then willpower is the strength that helps you follow through on them, especially when it's hard. And let's be honest, most of the time, it is hard. Growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. Growth happens in resistance, in the inner battles that no one else sees, but that you feel in your chest every time you try to do the thing you said you would do. Let's call this feeling what it is, an inner storm. 1 minute, you are ready to work on your goals. The next, you're scrolling your phone. You promise yourself, I'll practice English after lunch, but somehow the afternoon slips away. You know what you want, but you don't act on it. Then comes the guilt, the frustration, the little voice that whispers, what's wrong with me? That's where willpower comes in. Willpower is not about being perfect. It's not about being robotic. It's about learning how to stay with the discomfort long enough to push through it. In English, we might say dig deep. Willpower is the ability to do what matters most, even when you don't feel like it. It's the muscle that helps you stay on the path when every part of you wants to run back to what's easy and familiar. Now, let's talk more about willpower. First, remember this. Willpower isn't magic. It's not some invisible force that never runs out. It's actually more like a battery. Just like a battery, willpower drains with overuse. That's why, by the end of a long day, it's often harder to resist distractions or bad habits. Your brain is tired. Your decision-making energy is used up. This is also why many people recommend making important choices or doing challenging work in the morning before mental fatigue sets in. Early in the day, your willpower is stronger and you are more able to stay focused. Here's where routines connect with willpower. Remember what we talked about earlier? When you build habits into your day, you reduce the need to constantly rely on willpower. You don't have to argue with yourself or summon motivation each time. You just do it. Of course, this kind of automation, habits that run smoothly, takes time. While you are building them, you still need to rely on your inner strength. Let me share a personal story. Not long ago, I had a plan to record new podcast episodes, including this series. I had prepared everything: topics, deadlines, even a clear idea of how I wanted each episode to feel. But when it came time to press record, I hesitated. Not because I didn't care, I cared a lot. But fear crept in. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of speaking into silence. I kept telling myself, I'll do it tomorrow. And we all know what that usually means. It rarely happens tomorrow either. So, what changed? Nothing dramatic. I didn't wake up with sudden energy. I didn't read an inspiring quote or watch a motivational video. I simply decided to do the work anyway. I put on my headphones, opened my notes, and started recording. Even though I didn't feel ready, I pushed through the discomfort. I trusted that clarity would come after action, not before it. And it did. This is what willpower is. It's not waiting for perfect conditions. It's acting despite the storm inside you. Often, the hardest part is just starting. Once you take the first step, open the book, speak the first sentence, press the record button, the resistance begins to loosen. Not completely disappear, but loosen enough that you can move forward. In English, we have expressions that describe this very idea. Mind over matter, using your mental strength to overcome challenges. Power through, pushing forward even when it's hard. Dig deep, finding strength inside yourself. Hold the line, staying steady despite difficulty. All of these expressions carry the same message. Don't give up just because it's uncomfortable. Growth requires effort. That effort doesn't always feel good. But the results, resilience, confidence, integrity, are where the reward is. And here's something important to remember. Willpower alone isn't enough. You also need clarity, structure, and routines to support it. Willpower helps you push through the storm, but routines make the path easier and habits make it sustainable. Willpower isn't everything. Willpower alone is not the answer to everything. You're not a machine. You have limits. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is rest, not push harder. But how do you know the difference between needing rest and just avoiding discomfort? That's where self-awareness comes in. You need to listen closely to the quality of your resistance. Ask yourself, is it fear? Is it burnout? Is it procrastination disguised as perfectionism? Be honest with yourself and choose accordingly. Here's your reflection prompt. Where in your life do you need to dig deep? Not forever, but long enough to take the next step. What's the thing you keep putting off, not because you don't care, but because it challenges you? What would happen if you did it anyway, not perfectly, but honestly? This kind of self-inquiry isn't easy, but it is essential. When you start showing up for yourself in small moments, the voice in your head begins to change. You start to trust yourself. And that trust is what makes long-term growth possible. Remember, willpower won't carry you the whole way, but it can get you past the hardest part, the beginning. After that, momentum takes over. The more often you push through resistance, the stronger your internal compass becomes. T is for time management, the currency of attention. Now, let's move on to T for time management. So far, we've explored goals, routines, ownership, and willpower. These are the internal forces that drive meaningful change. But all of them depend on one critical ingredient: time. When most people hear time management, they immediately think of to-do lists, calendars, productivity hacks, trying to squeeze more into already packed days. But here's the truth. Managing time isn't really about hours. It's about attention, where your focus goes. Your time is finite. You can't pause it, save it, or rewind it. Once it's spent, it's gone. The real question isn't just how you spend your time. The real question is, what are you giving your attention to and why? There's a saying in English, use your time wisely. But what does that really mean? For some people, it means being busy, ticking off tasks, meeting deadlines, staying active. But activity is not the same as progress. You can be extremely busy and still feel like you are moving in circles. Real time management begins when you ask yourself, am I giving my time to what truly matters? And this is not just a technical question, it's an emotional question. Take a moment and think about your average day. How often do you lose track of time? Not because you are absorbed in something meaningful, but because you fall into autopilot. Maybe it starts with checking social media for just 5 minutes, and suddenly an hour is gone. Or maybe you sit down to study, but keep switching tabs, checking messages, and jumping between tasks until your focus is completely fractured. We often underestimate how much energy we lose through distraction. And that leads us to one of the biggest myths about time management, multitasking. Time management, the currency of attention. Many of us think we are being efficient by doing several things at once, but research shows the opposite. The human brain isn't designed for multitasking, at least not for complex tasks that require deep thought. What we are really doing is switch tasking, jumping rapidly from one thing to another. Each switch costs focus and energy. That mental friction adds up. It drains your energy, slows you down, and gives a false sense of productivity. This is why managing your attention is just as important, maybe even more important, than managing your schedule. The truth is, you don't need more time. You need clearer priorities and fewer distractions. To do this, you first have to be honest about where your time is really going. Let me share a personal insight. There was a time when I kept telling myself, I don't have time to write. I don't have time to record. And yes, on paper, it was true, I had a full plate. But when I looked closely at my evenings, I realized I was making time for everything except what mattered most. I was tired, yes, but I was also stuck in comfort behaviors, watching shows, scrolling, avoiding work. And the worst part? I didn't even feel better afterward. I felt more drained. Eventually, I had to face something uncomfortable. Time wasn't the issue. Focus was. I started tracking my days, even loosely. I asked myself, what is the first thing I do after waking up? Where does my attention go when I'm tired? Which activities give me energy, and which ones steal it? This awareness helped me design my time around energy, not just obligations. Here's the shift I want to offer you today. Don't just manage your time. Manage your energy. Ask yourself, when am I most focused? When am I most creative? Then protect those windows. Don't waste your best hours on things that don't serve your goals. Even just 20 minutes a day of focused, intentional effort can create more impact than 3 distracted hours ever could. Of course, this requires boundaries with yourself and with others. You may need to say no to some things. You may need to log off, mute notifications, or be less available. Yes, it can feel uncomfortable. But remember, every yes is a no to something else. When you say yes to scrolling, you say no to studying. When you say yes to busyness, you may be saying no to purpose. Time management is really about decision-making. It's about deciding what matters most to you. Here's your reflection prompt for today. How much of your day goes to what truly matters to you? Not what's urgent. Not what others expect. But what is meaningful to you? Be honest, not to shame yourself, but to see clearly. Because once you see clearly, you can start to choose differently. In English, there's a useful expression, make time. We don't say find time, as if time is just waiting around for us. We say make time, because meaningful things require intention. You have to carve them out, protect them, and commit to them. And if you fall off track, that's okay. You're human. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Take a breath, reset, and make a better choice next time. Every moment is a chance to realign with what matters. Habits, the subconscious drivers. We've already explored goals, routines, ownership, willpower, and time management, the pillars of conscious growth. But now let's talk about something that happens beneath the surface, almost invisibly: habits. Habits are the silent architects of our daily lives. They shape our actions before we even realize it, sometimes even when we don't want them to. You could say that habits are the subconscious drivers of behavior. Think of habits like well-worn paths in the forest of your mind. Once a path is clear and easy to follow, your brain prefers it because it saves energy. This is why so much of what we do every day feels automatic. You don't have to think about brushing your teeth, locking the door, or turning off the lights. Those actions just happen. This automaticity can be a blessing or a curse. Psychologists describe habits as loops made of three parts: a trigger, a routine, and a reward. The trigger is the signal that starts the habit. It could be waking up, feeling stressed, or hearing a certain sound. The routine is the behavior itself, the action you fall into. The reward is the positive feeling or relief that reinforces the habit, making it more likely to happen again. For example, think about checking your phone when a notification pings. The sound is the trigger, picking up the phone is the routine, and the rush of connection or distraction is the reward. Understanding this loop is crucial. Breaking a habit is not about willpower alone. Trying to stop a habit without replacing it often leads to frustration and relapse. Instead, science and experience show that you need to replace the habit with a new routine that delivers a similar reward. In other words, you're not just breaking old patterns, you're retraining your brain. This retraining is not a quick fix. Habits are deeply embedded in our neural circuits. It takes consistent effort and patience to create new, healthier habits that eventually become automatic. For example, if you want to reduce mindless snacking, you could replace it with drinking water or taking a short walk when the urge hits. Over time, your brain will start to associate the trigger with the new positive routine, and the old habit fades into the background. What's fascinating is how much of our behavior is actually habitual without us realizing it. How much of your daily behavior is driven by conscious intention, and how much is habit? This is a powerful question. When you start noticing the moments you fall into automatic behavior, you open a window into your life. You can see the parts that may be supporting you or limiting you, without your direct awareness. For many people, habits are like autopilot. We often resist the idea that small, repeated actions can have a profound effect. But it's true. Habits are the foundation for both growth and stagnation. The good news is that because habits operate below conscious thought, they can be changed. But it requires gentle persistence, not harsh judgment. Here's a personal insight from my own experience. I used to struggle with procrastination, especially when it came to language practice. I knew what I needed to do, but I often found myself distracted or avoiding it entirely. Habits. Working with your brain. Instead of beating myself up for procrastinating, I began to pay attention to the triggers. I noticed that my habit of avoiding work usually happened right after lunch, when my energy naturally dipped. Instead of fighting that urge, I created a new, small habit. I set a timer for just 10 minutes of focused study after lunch, followed by a small reward, like a short break or a cup of tea. Slowly, this tiny habit replaced the old pattern of avoidance. My productivity improved, and I didn't have to rely solely on willpower. This experience taught me something important. Habits are not your enemy. They are your brain's way of managing complexity. When you learn to work with your habits rather than against them, you unlock real potential for change. Here's a reflection for you. How much of your daily behavior is driven by conscious choice? How much is habit? Which habits serve you and which quietly hold you back? How could you gently retrain your brain, step by step? Remember, lasting growth doesn't come from sudden, dramatic changes. It comes from small, repeated choices. These tiny actions build the invisible architecture of transformation, shaping who you are over time. Conclusion: growth as a lifelong process. As we reach the end of this journey through the growth formula, take a moment to slow down, breathe, and reflect. Growth is not a destination. It's not a checklist or a finish line. Growth is a way of engaging with life itself. It is continuous, an ongoing conversation between who you are now and who you are becoming. Remember the 6 pillars we explored. Goals, your vision, the direction to move toward. Routine, the daily rhythm that keeps you anchored. Ownership, the reminder that the reins are in your hands. You are the author of your story. Willpower, the strength to move forward during moments of doubt, fear, or resistance. Time management, treating your attention like precious currency, investing it with intention. Habits, the subconscious drivers shaping your life, one repeated action at a time. Think of these not as rules, but as companions on your journey. Sometimes they feel strong and clear, guiding you forward. Other times, they may falter, and that's perfectly natural. Growth is never a straight line. It's more like a river, winding and flowing, sometimes rushing, sometimes still. There will be moments when you feel deeply connected to your purpose, and moments when the current pulls you into unfamiliar waters. What matters is showing up, observing, and making small, intentional choices again and again. Take a moment now. Notice a habit or a part of your life you want to change. Observe it without judgment. Awareness is the first step to real transformation. Growth is not a one-time achievement. It's a lifelong process, and each step, no matter how small, moves you forward. Let's keep growing together. I invite you to approach your own growth with kindness and curiosity. Growth isn't about rushing or forcing yourself. It's about listening, truly listening, to your inner voice, even when it feels critical, fearful, or uncertain. When was the last time you really paid attention to that inner voice? The quiet voice beneath all the noise, expectations, and distractions of daily life. That voice may speak softly, but it often carries deep wisdom about what matters to you, what moves you forward, and what holds you back. Growth is a deeply personal journey. It's unique to you, but it's also profoundly universal. We all face similar challenges. The pull between comfort and change. The tension between intention and habit. The balance between resilience and vulnerability. Yet, the way forward is unique to you. Your goals, routines, choices, and habits reflect your values, your dreams, and your lived experiences. No one else can walk your path for you. Here's a question to carry with you beyond this episode. How will you engage with growth today? Not as a distant goal, but as a way of living. Not just in big actions, but in small, intentional steps. Think of your life as a garden. Every thought, every choice, every action is a seed. Some seeds grow quickly, others slowly. Some need watering, others need pruning. But with patience and attention, every seed contributes to the life you are cultivating. If you have a journal or a quiet space, take a moment to write or reflect. Which of the 6 elements, goals, routines, ownership, willpower, time management, and habits, feel like strengths in your life right now? Which ones could use a little more nurturing? What small step could you take today, no matter how modest, to honor your growth? Remember, growth is not about perfection. It's about progress. One breath at a time. One thought at a time. One action at a time. Every small moment of awareness is an opportunity to steer your life toward deeper fulfillment. Thank you for allowing me to walk this path with you. It's a privilege to share this space where language meets life, where learning becomes transformation. As you move forward, keep growing, keep reflecting, and keep embracing the beautiful complexity of becoming. This is Jara, and you've been listening to Super English Talks, your self-development hub, where words and wisdom come together. Take care, and I'll see you next time.